All right, we are live, back with you once again. CrossPolitic Countdown. I'm Andrew Southwick. He is Justin Chartreux. It's good to see everybody here today. It's been a little bit. We were off for the holiday last week and a bunch of other things, and probably the seasonal flu, as everybody is getting right now in America. We're sharing that experience. Thank you, whoever invented this particular strain. Now, and next week, I want to say too, we won't be live. That's my fault. I'll be literally driving at the time, so it wouldn't be safe to live stream and drive. But nonetheless, we want to do a little recap of 2025. What were some of the highlights from CrossPolitic news in the year that was, and then some predictions on the year to come. And that's what we'll talk about today. So, Justin, good to see you again. I trust your holidays went reasonably well, and the new year at least is off to a good start in the first 36 or so hours.
Absolutely. You know, up here in the Pacific Northwest, I think the weirdest part about our Christmas was that we did not have a white Christmas, which was kind of a letdown. But January has, day one, January 1, 2026, got white stuff on the ground. So making up for lost time.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, we're down in Florida right now at our place in Florida, enjoying some time there. And it's not a white Christmas, though. It has been cold at night. And we are in North Florida, so I guess that's South Georgia. And, it gets down to about freezing. Last year, we had the most snow, I think, on record in the state of Florida. We had like 5 inches, which is literally a Florida record, and it was all at our house. So, and Florida is not prepared for any of that. Like, we live out in the middle of nowhere, but so all the roads are rural. And of course, when you don't have an infrastructure to deal with snow and ice, you're stuck till it melts or until you feel safe enough to traverse and not land in the ditch. So anyway, that was a fun experience, but no snow, no white Christmas either, but it still was a good one. So. All right, Justin, well, let's keep going. I'll just throw it over to you. What were maybe the top 3, highlights of CrossPolitic news coming out of 2025? What's the first one that's top of mind for you?
Yeah, so I'm gonna maybe throw a little different spin on this for you. Just kind of thinking about this off the top of my head. We'll do this in true CrossPolitic style. So when we look at our company and what we want to produce for our readers is we like to look at news in 3 categories. So different styles or the different types of government that God has ordained. So you have your family government, your church government, and your civil government. And so we would like to bring you the news in those 3 categories. So for me, I can pick one for each of those 3 categories if you like. I think that would be kind of a cool way to do it. So for me, if I look at the family, I'll start first. I'll start with the civil. So the civil for me, the biggest news that we covered was the beginning of 2025, where we had a flurry of activity by the Trump administration at the beginning of that term for him. So that was obviously something we covered quite extensively. The rash of executive orders that were signed, bringing in guys like Pete Hegseth as your Department of War Secretary and some of these other guys that really were making an impact early in the process. So I'd say for me, biggest story of 2025 on the civil side was really just that first full year of the Trump presidency, and especially it taking effect there at the beginning of the year.
Let me ask you about that Trump presidency. Mixed bag, even from Trump supporters, even from conservatives, in terms of where we are at the end of all things. I want to bring something up. Let me find this really quickly. Bear with me here. I did not think to do this before we got going, but then I'm like, well, maybe we should. And those of you wondering why I look weird, I'm literally standing up because I have my webcam on. I'm on the road, guerrilla filmmaking. Oh my goodness. I never dated here. Okay, so for example, you got personalities like Stu Peters summing up Trump's year 1, allowing private equity. This is on his X account. allowing private equity like BlackRock to access your 401ks. That's through an executive order, which is true. Cutting a $70 billion deal with Pfizer. We didn't see them in handcuffs. Nationalizing computing power by handing AI infrastructure to Palantir. Impending, Venezuelan invasion, and then, of course, the floating idea of 50-year mortgages, among other things. One of the things that I have, whoops, wrong window here. One of the questions I've gotten a lot from viewers of other program, Culture Crossroads, is, what am I supposed to think about this? Because in some ways there are some things we do like, but in other ways there are some real swings and misses, and some if Trump had campaigned on, I'm going to give a $70 billion deal to Pfizer, we're going to make 50-year mortgages instead of actually stopping printing money, things of that nature, we might have had other questions for him. Or if Biden were to do those things, we'd be up in arms. How do you sort out the mercurial year that was Trump 2.0, year one?
Yeah, I think for me, it just reinforces the fact that we, as a movement, if we want to say we're conservative Christian, godly people who are voting our conscience and voting for somebody we believe that God is going to use to help turn our country back to Him, we need to move away from populism in large steps. We need to make the kind of movement toward people who will govern like a DeSantis in Florida. I mean, we've talked about that several times. Somebody who actually puts pen to paper and does what he says he will do. Things that are conservative and moving toward that direction and fighting against a progressive agenda. Trump is mercurial. That's his nature, and that was Trump 1.0. And anybody who thought that it would be different in the second go around was sort of lying to themselves. If I'm honest, people would make the argument, well, he knows how to govern now. His hands were tied. He didn't have the people in place he wanted. That, some of that was probably true in the first presidency, but that just meant that the mercurial nature of Trump in 2.0 was better reinforced by the people Trump likes, which aren't necessarily conservative people. 20 years ago, Trump was a liberal who, probably voted along the Clinton lines, in the 90s, I'm sure. He's not somebody that we would just say is a traditional conservative person. And honestly, we don't know enough about J.D. Vance to know what his influence would have been on Trump, from the beginning either. So to say I'm surprised, maybe not surprised, maybe a little disappointed based on some of the campaign rhetoric, but definitely not surprised.
What do you think then, CrossPolitic News across the site, and since the launch of CrossPolitic News, what do you think were a couple of the biggest stories that we covered on the website and through the news outlet?
Yeah, well, I would say the biggest story we covered throughout the year was probably the death of Charlie Kirk, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, several months ago. Mm-hmm. That was by far the one that had the most readership and viewing. We did the live stream while it was happening, the tragedy that unfolded before our eyes. We were able to hopefully bring some perspective and understanding to that situation through that live stream, but also just some of the coverage that we had in the aftermath. So I would say that was definitely the one that had the most views, which impacted, I would say, primarily our family government side of things. It impacts our lives. It impacts people, how we interact. That really was a shocking thing, because it was a man who was, spreading the gospel, but also going to places that were outright hostile to the truth of the gospel, and doing it in a way that was trying to be open and conversational and debate in an open forum, and they killed him for it. And we are now living in a world where that's sort of the expectation. I don't know what else to say. So that was definitely something that, as we covered it and as it unfolded, had some really big implications for this year.
Speaking of Charlie Kirk and his assassination, how do you assess the right wing, whether it's establishment media or conservative media? It's difficult to say because even, they held the big memorial service, and part of it was a memorial, but part of it was announcing J.D. Vance as a candidate for 28. We just saw Erica Kirk endorse him. He's not even running yet officially, although most of the smart money says he will. And of course, with him being J.D. Vance, being backed heavily by Peter Thiel, who sits in the captain chair at Palantir, who has the most government contracts just in the first year from 2.0, et cetera, et cetera. We could go on and on. But anyway, there's a lot of forces that say J.D. Vance might be a strategic candidate, at least, not necessarily strategic for conservative purposes, but for other purposes. Yeah. But in terms of the media, there has been a memorial of sorts. But when I see it, and tell me if I'm wrong, and this is where I think CrossPolitic News does well, because you have not done this, but there's a lot of trading on his name, and I realize why, because it's going to get views and clicks, and they're going to get eyeballs on their stories. Yeah. But it's highly disingenuous because everybody claiming they are Charlie Kirk. Well, we're not. He was one person. God created him, and God has called him home. We have our jobs to do, but it also does show there is a shift in conservative media because there's big money in conservative media. There are gatekeepers. There is a platform that someone is trying to cannibalize and position for their own, whatever company it might be, whatever conservative conglomerate it might be. Mm-hmm. What do you think of conservative media in the abstract? What do you think of their response in handling in the aftermath of the assassination of Charlie Kirk?
I'm personally appalled, I think, by most of it. I've been really appreciative of one of our, regular contributors to the CrossPolitic News website, Luke Edison, who has done a lot of digging into some of those big names, whether that's Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes. He's covered a lot of them and tried to really dig into, some of the backgrounds, their history in terms of like public exposure and media, different organizations they've been a part of, to kind of help paint a picture of what actually is influencing the majority of conservative thinking in 2025 and forward. And it is chaos. It is absolute chaotic. You have people all over the place who are saying, no, we will be the next Charlie Kirk, whether that's Candace Owens, whether that's Erica Kirk, whether that's J.D. Vance, whether that's whoever. And none of them have a message that I would call cohesive, much less grounded in anything true. A lot of it is, again, it's the same rhetoric as the lead up to the 2024 election, which is we need to foment people's ire and outrage and get people on board so we can keep winning elections. But in terms of steering a ship, in terms of charting a course and following it, we do not have those voices in conservative media, I don't think. We have a lot of people that have shock value, that dig into things and try and expose things, and they give people voices that otherwise wouldn't, like think of Tucker Carlson's interviews in the last, year plus. Some of them, great. Like you're finding people that maybe wouldn't have a platform otherwise, but at the same time, we're not talking about these things in a way that's productive or channeling them through the lens of Scripture. We're just letting them vent on a nationally syndicated show, and then like you be the judge. But really, relativism hasn't served us well in the last 20 plus years, and it doesn't do so either in conservative media.
Well, then that brings us really to the next topic. We where do we go in 2026? And I think a couple of things that we talked about is interesting. We started off the conversation by, the Trump presidency being the biggest story, out of 25 as a whole nationally, and then of course our biggest story on CrossPolitic News being Charlie Kirk. But that this is a mixed bag, that we don't have great messaging coming from conservative ink, so to speak, or con ink, if you prefer. But we're going to need that messaging, because we're going to need more than, well, we're not the Democrats. We're going to need more than, well, we're not socialists, because actually kind of are, at least on the national stage, venture socialists, if anything. What would be some messaging that you would like to see coming out of the apparatus? And then, of course, if not, what's the messaging that's needed to break through? Messaging that, places like CrossPolitic News will be carrying in 2026.
Yeah, so I'm gonna throw it back to maybe our biggest 2025 story in our third category, which is the church, and really it's tragedy. In 2025, were the biggest stories that hit the church for CrossPolitic News' coverage, which were the deaths of two really well-known, respected, and beloved pastors who had very large international voices, Vodi Bakum and John MacArthur. And to me, 2026 will need to be the year, I believe, because I don't think we're going to have a coalition of those conservative voices. They're plenty happy building their own platforms and brands and making their millions. I don't think you're going to find that cohesion there. I believe the cohesion needs to come from the church. I would love to see in 2026, CrossPolitic News being able to cover more comprehensive and necessary and impactful church government stories that will bring about a big change nationally for our country, and that is replacing some of those powerful voices of Vodi Bakum and John MacArthur. That's going to be some of our how do the PCA and the Southern Baptist Convention meetings in 2026 echo a need for change and a coalition of the church to begin to drive the ship in a way that's productive instead of just fomenting outrage and ire. So those are the things I think in 2026, having voices that aren't just squabbling over small things as we're prone to do, but actually having a perspective that is bigger and is looking to the future would be the most necessary thing for me, I believe.
That to me, and even speaking as a pastor, that will take a couple of things. One, just the church within. I do think there's room for the church to repent of a couple of things. One, we've talked about cultural complacency, and we certainly have been. We have abdicated our roles as influencers in culture in order to get along so we don't offend anyone. We've done everything we can to water down the gospel to make it palatable for people. And in so doing, it's palatable but not powerful in people's lives. And that's a big deal. And by extension, then we become less, I don't want to say comfortable, less bold in our proclamation and in the living out of our faith, and not knowing then why we believe what we believe. On my other show, I did an interview with Dylan Novak, who is known as the celebrity evangelist, and he is not an evangelist who's popular. He evangelizes to celebrities. So he goes to Comic-Cons and so on, and he brings them personalized Bibles, and he studies, does research, what they've said about religion, so on and so forth. He talked about meeting Ted Danson on the street. Ted Danson, Cheers, Sam Malone. All right. For those of you who don't know, just watch Cheers and realize how much you missed out on. But anyway,
Gen Zs.
Yeah. And he's married to Mary Steenburgen, who was in Back to the Future 3 and Parenthood and some other cool stuff. But anyway, they met them on the street, gave them a Bible. And one of the things Ted Danson said was, in their brief conversation, that, he's open to talking about spiritual things, but he doesn't want to hear about what people believe as much as why they believe it. And so I think that's one of the things that we have not done well as a church is articulate to our people. Here's why we believe in Jesus. Here's why. We a lot about the what, but we haven't really equipped people with the why. And so I think that's the first thing. And the second thing would be, if we're going to, get away from some of the denominational infighting and so on that you alluded to, PCA and SBC and all this other stuff, one, we have to stop pretending that these issues we're fighting about are political and understand that they are spiritual, and don't let the political realm co-opt them any longer, and bring them back to where they belong on the kingdom ground in the Word of God, and measure them accordingly, weigh them accordingly. And then two, hopefully not fall in love with our own intellect, because I'll tell you, one of the things that I do see quite a lot on social media, I realize social media is largely a cesspool. I get it.
Yeah.
But it seems like there's a fair, or at least the loudest voices of Christianity that I see are talking about how right they are, and not really concerned with helping other people be made righteous in the name of Christ. It's more like, here's why you should believe the end times my way. Here's why you should believe this my way. Here's why you should believe this my way. And if you don't, how do you even dare to breathe air that God created? And just we are in love with our own intellect to such a degree that we don't really love the individuals, the people that we need to. And I think those two things are going to be huge if the church is going to take up that mantle of messaging. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So I wanted to key in on a phrase, something that you said, that we need to teach people why they believe, not just what they believe. I would say one of the biggest areas of personal change in my life in 2025 was God reinforcing in me the why. Because the what leads to, if all we focus on is the what we believe, that's what leads to what you're talking about. The online infighting, we have the right way of thinking, we have the right doctrine and you don't, and all of that. It's pride. It's nothing short of pride. It's man thinking that he has figured God out and has God in a box. And so when we're out there, we become punchers. We don't become gospel spreaders. So, we have a lot of Christian men, especially, who have heard the call to be strong and courageous, and taken that message and turned it into, well, I'm going to study everything and make sure I know it better than everybody. And then I'm just going to start throwing haymakers. And that has been detrimental to the cause of Christ, I think, in our country. We definitely, post 2020, we needed godly, courageous, strong men, because we had a lot of weak, spineless men who weren't willing to stand up for truth. And now we've got those guys standing up for truth, but they are just standing up for the what. They've forgotten the why. And the why is simply this: I am a sinner, and I am saved by a loving God who died for my sins. And he didn't have to. He didn't have to pour out his blood. He didn't have to suffer unimaginably on a cross for me, but he did. He loved me so profoundly, and he has given me new life. And to me, if that's the why, there's no shortage of time or effort I can spend on sharing that message with other people, and showing that and giving that hope, right? What does Peter say in 1 Peter 3? The apologetics verse, give people a reason, not for the what you believe, but for the hope that's in you.
Yeah.
That hope is personal. That hope is internal. That hope it's life. It's joy. It's the thing that we're clinging to, even when life is hard and terrible and our life feels like a misery. But the why is why we keep going.
And it's a shift of perspective from trying to change a person's mind to telling them why God changed your heart, and how that works. Because that's really the testimony that we have our own lives and what God has done in our own lives, the transformational work by the Holy Spirit He's done in our lives. And that's something that no one can refute. I mean, not that you can refute Scripture in a way that's going to make it revealed to be untrue, because people have tried and failed over and over again.
Yeah.
But also in your own life, if you're worried about, well, I don't know how to argue apologetically, if you know the Lord, you know His work in your life. That's where you go. That's where you start. That's what you act on proclaim. And I hope we can get back to that just as a church.
Yeah,
Universal.
because there's a great the shift that you're describing too is a shift in humility. It is a shift of the heart to not only receive Christ and receive His love and receive the gift of salvation, but it is a shift in humility. It is that you recognize I am not enough. I don't know everything. Apart from Christ, I can do nothing. I am not my own. I am bought with a price, right? Like those are that's the words of the scriptures. And they teach us that, we need to be, completely submissive to God and understanding His will. And then we can go forth and we can be courageous, bold. We can speak the truth like Charlie Kirk did. We can do things in the public sphere that are not weak and spineless like we have been as a culture for so long, but they also aren't rude and outright, braggadocious, if I can use that big word. But
it's both bold, biblical boldness, and biblical meekness, right? Meekness being strength under control, but also bold in our witness, and marrying those two together, and then letting God be responsible for the result, both your own result, whatever that might be, and the result of the the gospel that you're sharing. Last few minutes here. Want to move on. Let's talk about a couple of pointless things real quick before we go. And they're not really pointless. They're not really pointless. I know not to you. I know not to me. But we were talking just off the air before we started the broadcast, and we've talked about some Seattle sports before. There's a big game coming up tomorrow as of this broadcast, Saturday, primetime game, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific. The Seattle Seahawks taking on the San Francisco 49ers for the number 1 seed in the NFC and the NFC West Division Championship. Something that at the beginning of the year, if you listen to the prognosticators and the talking heads, no one thought that was going to be something. Most had Seattle picked at the bottom of the barrel, a 4-win team, a 5-win team. The Vegas odds had them over under 7 wins. And this is really where I do wish I had just gone back and put some money down, because to take over of 7 right now when we're sitting at 13, possibly getting to 14, it would have been a nice Christmas present for me, but I'm an idiot, so I didn't. But at the same time, we also have the Seattle Mariners apparently in what could be a championship window. They were 8 outs away from the World Series just a couple of months ago. Made my son cry, actual ugly tears. I'll never forgive him for that. But anyway.
Welcome to the club, boy.
Yeah, I know, right? This is what it's like.
This is what it's like.
But anyway, people are nervous about tomorrow's game. I'm a little bit nervous. I'm not sure why. When you look at a total team, a total roster, Seattle is the more complete team. Seattle is actually the better team on paper and on complete roster. I really think that 80% of the nervousness is Sam Darnold, and I don't know how much of that is because we still believe in, well, is Sam Darnold going to turn into a pumpkin? Obviously, I mean, he's leading the league in turnovers, more than Geno. I'd still rather have Darnold than Geno, but nonetheless, he's leading the league, and maybe more than his interceptions. I think his fumbles have been more costly. But I mean, for crying out loud, the first time, game 1 was when we played San Francisco. We lost 17-13. And we had 2 chances to win it. If Tariq Woolen actually plays defense and bats the ball away from Tongas in the end zone, they don't go up 17-13 to begin with. And that was a 3rd down. They would go for a 4th, but nonetheless, I'm not blaming it on Woolen, and he's improved a lot. I'm just saying that play had been made a little differently, you wouldn't have that touchdown. But then end of the game, we're, I think, inside the 10. And if Lucas doesn't get pushed back by Bosa into the back of Sam Darnold, he doesn't fumble that ball, we probably score 20 points and win the game. And then this game would be effectively meaningless. We'd have it wrapped up already. So, and then you say, well, what about the Rams? We gave up 500 some odd yards to the Rams. When you look at the 2 Rams games this year, They're even, but they're separated by 1 point and 1 yard.
Mm-hmm.
The Rams, we gave up 1 more point to the Rams than they gave up to us. We gave up 1 more yard, or they gave up 1 more yard to us than we gave up to them. It's like 861 to 860. So we both had bad defensive games. We both had anemic offenses. These are Rams and Seahawks, at least when they played together, they were even. Seahawks and 49ers, the Seahawks, again, they have the better and dominant team on paper, but then it comes to execution. Is Brock Purdy a better quarterback than Darnold? Probably. I think they're going to be without Trent. He's on the line. Trent Williams.
Trent Williams, yeah.
But it looks like that's really their only significant injury that won't play. We will not have Abe Lucas. Josh Jones looks like he's questionable, but probably will play. Not sure what effectiveness. Rashid Shaheed did clear concussion protocol. That's a big deal. Without him, we don't win Rams Part 2. So, what are your thoughts about Saturday? Are you nervous? If so, why? And then what are your predictions? And then I'll give you mine.
Okay, so there's a lot there. I guess the only thing that makes me nervous is that it's Seattle going for our national, NFC West championship. And we've been here so many times, right? I mean, the 49ers are, they're sort of the boogeyman. It's funny, you go back 10 years into the Legion of Boom days, and you have some of those really, memorable moments in this rivalry. I can still clearly see Richard Sherman tipping away that pass from Michael Crabtree in the end zone in the wild card game.
And people forget they were the 40. No, that was the championship game, wasn't it?
Was it? Okay. Yeah, championship game. You're right.
And people forget the 49ers the year prior, the 2012 49ers went to the Super Bowl and lost. So that was defending Super Bowl champs.
Yeah, you're right.
We knocked them off the mantle there at the last possible moment.
Yep. So that that moment happened, and there's been others. 20. I'm gonna be bad at years here, but there was a couple years ago where it was down to the Seahawks and the 49ers again, and the Seahawks.
2019. That was Russell Wilson. That was when Marshawn Lynch came back, and we had nobody. We were down to Marshawn Lynch and Robert Turbin as our running backs. Russell Wilson really was carrying the team at that time. Legion of Boom was long dead. And we did not pull it off in that particular evening, but that was a 2019 game, and it was for the NFC West division. It wasn't for the NFC number 1, but it was for the NFC West division. I think that was still a playoff year, or at least the next year was, and then we won 1, and then we were bounced in the divisional round. But we've been here before with San Francisco. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Continue.
No, that's good. So to me, in the Kyle Shanahan, ghost of, this is right. This is the reason we talked about this before. This is the reason you bring in Mike McDonald, because he's supposed to be the guy, the architect of an offense and defense, or mostly a defense, that can stymie the offensive maneuverings of a Kyle Shanahan. And blanking on the Rams coach.
Sean McVay.
McVay, thank you. Yeah. So those guys, offensive dynamos, and you bring in a defensive guy like Mike McDonald, and he's been that, right. He's done his job there, but this is going to be the big test.
You want a stat to make you feel good. The Seahawks, since the Rams game, their run game has shown consistent improvement almost week to week. And we've topped 100 yards a couple of times. And then, of course, Charbonnet got eclipsed 100 with 2 touchdowns in the last game, and tied with, was it Lynch for 11 touchdowns in the year? Could see some more. But since midseason, that Rams midpoint, the 49ers are bottom of the pile when it comes to run defense. So there's a world here where the Seahawks win actually, and this would be the irony of ironies, where they win playing Pete ball, where they win, or ground chuck, if you want to go back to the 80s, where they win on the ground if they can get enough push, and stay ahead of the chains for sure. Stay on schedule. Get 3 and 4 yards on your first down every single time. Don't let's not have 2nd and 12 and 2nd and 15. That's when we get into problems. But there's a world where that can occur, and that will then limit the potential turnover worthy plays from Sam Darnold, because I do think they came out way conservative against the 49ers the first time, and almost too conservative. You could argue that our offense, even just playing normal, is better, and I think our offense has improved since then. There's no doubt that our pass game has declined since the Rams game, and maybe that was because, oh my gosh, 4 interceptions. Kind of like when they did the let Russ cook, and then all of a sudden he's throwing 4 picks to the Giants, and now we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's a matter of overcorrection. There's definitely some difference in schematically and in play design for sure, but there's got to be enough looseness. We're going to have to take shots because the shots are going to be there, but we have an opportunity to defeat them on the ground here, I think, and to control the game that way, and limit the amount of times that we have to worry about the turnovers that unfortunately Darnold just does. But then the weird thing is, he's got 20 turnovers to his name, I believe. and yet the Seahawks have the highest point differential in the league.
Yeah.
We're also 13
Super Bowl worthy.
Yeah. So we're good enough to overcome those, but that doesn't necessarily mean we want to keep doing it. Anyway, go ahead.
So here's my thought. Okay, so I think, and I've loved listening to Mike Macdonald. He's worth a listen if you ever get a chance to listen to his 30-minute interviews on Mondays with the Brock and Salk show. That's been a really fun listen for me. I honestly, I can't prove it because I haven't looked into it and probably won't, but I think Mike Macdonald's a believer. I'm just going to say that. It's just a thought. But he has a phrase that he uses a lot where he says that the game declares itself. This is why I believe the Seahawks are always in games that they lose and have opportunities to blow out teams that they win. So they are they're constantly shifting. That's the thing, is you can't really peg this team down and say, well, they're take the top off and just throw deep balls all day kind of offense like they have been, right? JSN almost was threatening that 2,000 yard barrier for receiving early in the season. And lately they've been ground and pound, right? I mean, I owe Charbonnet probably a bottle of champagne for helping me win my fantasy championship last week. But anyway, it's
good for you. I didn't get my fantasy championship yet again. I won my rookie year. I've been to the finals once since then. Thank you for bringing up that memory. Anyway, go ahead.
Sorry. But so it just really depends. I think the nice thing about a guy like Macdonald is he is the quintessential coach of making in-game adjustments. And I think that he is ready for whatever kind of game San Francisco throws. And San Francisco's defense has been abysmal as of late. They've been giving up a ton of points to grandfather time, Phillip Rivers, and then Chicago Bears, which they've been a good offense. But, let's not forget, I mean, they've been playing very suspect defenses lately when they've been blowing out, 30, 40 points, 5 touchdown games. I don't think they've faced a defense like the Seahawks since the last time they played the Rams. So I think I'm not necessarily nervous about the X's and O's and kind of the execution of the game on Saturday. My general nervousness is just because I'm a Seattle fan and I'm used to disappointment.
The Seattle sports trauma is real. It's deep, and we all deserve compensation, financial compensation, I believe, for our mental suffering because it carries with us.
With that, can I tell you, in my basement right now, I have displayed on a bookshelf 4 World Series tickets for the 2001 World Series. Home game number 4 at Safeco Field.
Yeah, that would have been nice. Would have been nice. You didn't get that, though, because they didn't win. Because the Mariners, who won 116 games that year and destroyed the Yankees all year long, decided that the ALCS was the time to lose in 5. Okay. Or 6, maybe what it was. I don't know. Anyway, whatever. All right. Keys to tomorrow's game, and how about a prediction? Give us a score.
Yeah. So for me, the biggest key is just containing Christian McCaffrey. You know, putting guys on him. I think Nick Emanwari is going to come up big in that. That is going to be a big matchup to watch. I think he's got the size and the Cam Chancellor ability to put a hurting on McCaffrey and keep up with them speed wise. And I really think that's just going to be a shutdown opportunity. And then you get, and then Brock Purdy does have to beat you. And as good as he's been the last couple of games, he is very limited in his ability to get the ball downfield. He's got limitations. He's the last pick in the draft for a reason. I shouldn't say, he hasn't earned everything he's gotten, because clearly he's a hard worker and he's made himself a career in the NFL starter, which is wild. But you got to understand, like, there are some things you can do to him defensively that take away a lot of his options. So I do hope the Seahawks take advantage of that. And if they do, I do believe the Seahawks do win this game. And I do think it will be a one-score game. My prediction would be Seahawks 27 and we'll say 49ers 23.
Okay. All right. For me, I think really the key is containing Brock Purdy. Here's why, particularly the edges. Purdy will run. Sam Darnold can run, but he doesn't. I think if he does, it would take some pressure off of him, because you'd have to have a spy, not bite on him. I think that would help him with some of his turnovers. But nonetheless, that's not the point. But Purdy does get out of the pocket. When he has gone out of the pocket, he's been effective, and that's when he was most effective in game one, was when he got out of the pocket, got out to the edge, and was able to make a throw on the run and in some space. So I think you got to keep Brock Purdy contained. We did not have Nick Emanwari last time because he was injured on play number 4. We also didn't have Uchenna Nwosu. So that's somebody new on the defense that he's going to have to face. So I think those are 2 things that will help. I also think that Emanwari can also help in coverage when it comes to guys, particularly tight ends, because we do give up a lot of receptions to tight ends in the middle of the field, but we especially need to be careful of that when it gets into the red zone. So I think those 2 things are key. And then again, I think the run game, if we can take advantage of their obvious weakness, they being the 49ers' weakness in run defense, which is now enough of a sample size that it's a trend for them, and we can get, I don't care if it's Walker or Charbonnet. I don't really care. Whoever's got the hot hand, that person.
Feed them
out of space, get them moving the ball forward. I don't want to see any gadget plays of any kind, any trick plays. Kubiak just needs to take all the trick plays, put them in a bottle, put them on the shelf, leave it in there. I don't want to see anything weird. I don't want to see flicker, flee. I don't want any of that stuff. I also really don't want on first down some halfback tosses where we're tossing and we're 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage and we've got to run a country around before we even get 1 yard past the line of scrimmage. Move forward, please. Oh, please, just move the ball forward. If you want to do a toss, then do it out of the gun. If you need to move backwards, but please don't move the ball backwards and then try to go forwards. I haven't said that. I think it's a 1 score as well. I'm going to go with the Seahawks 31-27. I'm going to say there's going to be a few field goals in there as well, but I think they can pull it out as long as they contain Brock Purdy. And, of course, we can't have the Sam Darnold crushing red zone turnovers, but we also can't have Sam Darnold timid either. So, and here's another stat I wanted to mention before we go. Brock Purdy, touchdowns to interception ratio against the Seahawks, against Mike McDonald's Seahawks. What do you think it is?
I'm going to say 1-to-1, right? We'll say 50%. Or, I mean, that's not 50%, but I don't know. Well, I have no idea.
He's actually below 500. I believe it's 7 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, and that includes game 1 of this year. So we have picked him off more than he has gotten into the end zone with his arm.
All right.
So look, hey man, these are good things. These are good things. Yeah. We got to hold on to them because I know the Seattle trauma is real, and for some reason we don't want to believe in Sam Darnold. We don't want to trust Sam Darnold. We don't want to trust our defense.
It's not for some reason. It's It's for pretty good. It's for 20 reasons.
I know, but for crying out loud, we're still sitting at 13-3. I mean,
It's true.
Brett Favre,
But
the gunslinger, he'd throw 4 interceptions. Nobody did that, said that to him. He's
sure,
got
but
one Super Bowl his entire career. And he's one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever do it. Right?
you know what though? So I think the problem is we've been Geno Smith, traumatized probably also. That guy. I mean, that guy threw picks all over the place, but he did not have the emotional maturity to
No.
overcome those mistakes. He would shut down,
Mhm.
or he would just start barking at people on the sidelines, punching people, whatever. Darnold, I would say the thing that I like about him is he rallies off of those picks. He threw those two. He had the two turnovers, against the Panthers, and came back second half, led a touchdown drive. Gets us back into it, and makes some big plays against the Rams. Right? I mean, we're down by 2. They put up the stat that Seahawks were 170. When
Like
you're
0-181 went down by 16 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and
I love the next day the Seahawks put out that we are 1-0 in our last one game, went down by 16 points in the fourth quarter. That's fantastic.
And Darnold led those drives.
He turned the ball over against the Rams too, and came back. I think the main thing is just I think those turnovers are going to happen because I think that's just something that happens. I don't know why, but and I'm not. Like I said, the interceptions I could live with. The fumbles I think are what kills us more. And the fumbles that we lose. But if we can minimize some of that, a run game would help. Him moving out of the pocket when he's got an opportunity to run, beat him with his legs, make the 49ers defense deal with him honestly and not just pin their ears back. If that's possible, then I think we do. Because again, all of our 3 losses this year are fluky, weird last plays. Every single one of them. We could be sitting here at 16-0 right now. I mean, legitimately, with 20 interceptions and everything else, or not interceptions, but with 20 turnovers and all of it. So, and I'm not a Sam Darnold apologist, but I think that some of the intrepidation surrounding him is a bit more media narrative mixed with Seattle sports past trauma, and that we can't quite. We don't want to believe yet because we don't want to get our hearts broken, especially with what's on the line tomorrow. All right. We better run because we went overtime on that one, but that's okay because it's all worth it. Justin, anything we can look forward to in 2026? CrossPolitic news, things that we're looking to bring online, new stuff happening. What's the latest there?
Yeah, we're pretty excited. We've got some new journalists that are joining us for 2026. We're looking to start featuring some of their content in the new year, and Joel Curtinitis is one. He's somebody who comes out of Iowa. He has had some, he's done a lot with Iowa politics, worked with Steve Deace, some of those things. So he's somebody that can, bring some new voices to CrossPolitic News. We got a lot of other folks returning as well. Like I mentioned, Luke Edison earlier. We got Justin Cochran. We've got Bill Peacock and others that have been real contributors for us over the last year who are going to keep bringing us great news. And as we come into 2026, we also have midterms coming up this year. So again, this is sort of a bellwether for the next presidential cycle. So we don't necessarily want to cover it from that angle. As we look to again cover things locally and hit things that matter to us where we live, but we're just definitely going to be looking at the midterm elections and seeing, where the states are at in terms of, are we making progress under the new Trump administration? Are we seeing those local movements on the ground starting to coalesce and bring about some change? So I think those are the big things we're going to be looking at throughout 2026 and as we approach that election cycle.
Excellent. All right. Well, for Justin Chartrand, I'm Andrew Southwick. This has been CrossPolitic Countdown. Thank you for being with us. Those of you popping in and out live, and those of you who will be seeing this on demand at a later date, we will be back with you in 2 weeks. Because I'll be on the road next week. But going to be a big year. We're going to cover it all on CrossPolitic Countdown. Until next time, so long.
All right.